Hi, my name is Nancy Love, and I have something to say about the possible corrective uh, phenomenon that is occurring, and it's called COVID 19. What I have to say isn't pretty, and it's not going to be fun to hear, but you need to hear it, particularly if you breed. There are a lot of reasons not to have children on this planet. For one thing, they might get brought into the mafia, in which case their lives will be a form of hell. Another is they might become cops or join the military, in which case they will be enslaved by a system that is totalitarian and draconian and will basically eat their souls alive. Makes me think of a odd time to tell a joke, but I saw a cartoon years ago where a guy was standing at a desk that was labeled human resources, and a woman is sitting there and she says, I understand you've been promoted to management. You can check your soul here, and if you quit or learn how to play the saxophone, we'll give it back to you. So, there's a lot of forms of slavery in this on the slave ship called Earth. But let's think about nature and how life will have itself. We've all walked past, asphalt streets with some crack in it and seen some precious little valiant spriglet of plant growing through the crack. We've all seen. I once saw a chain link fence that was backed up against a wooden fence. Lo and behold, all kinds of vines had grown between those two, and were using the chain link fence to grow up the side of the wooden fence. I took photos of them and had put them in an art show that I had called Life Will Have Itself. We've all known people, we may be people, who've continued to function and survive and sometimes learn how to thrive in conditions that are really abhorrent and restrictive and even dangerous. But life, life seems to want to have itself. And humans are just too damn good at starting life. We have overpopulated a planet. We have abnegated our responsibility to our own intelligence and to the world and to every other species hereupon by breeding way too prolifically for way too long. Think of the population J curve. When I was a kid, more than half a century ago, there was, I'm just going to draw it out for you, but you know what a J curve is. They said there were approximately 4 billion people on the planet, but probably during the course of my natural lifetime, it would go to at least 8 billion. So I said, how long did it take humanity to get to 4 billion? And they said millennia. Thousands and thousands of years it took us to get to 4 billion. But in only half a century or so, the population was going to go straight up and, double. And I said, but wait, we're not feeding the babies we have now. Don't you all tell me that approximately 25,000 people starve all the way to death every single 24-hour period? More than half of them are children. Somewhere between 8,000 to 13,000 children starve to death every day. And you gotta be pretty malnourished to starve all the way to where you die. These kids have never had enough to eat for one day of their life. And yet you relatively rich people, otherwise known as those who have enough and have always had enough, think it's okay to breed. Did it ever occur to you to feed the children we've got instead of making more of your own? One of the best things I never did was have children, because at least I don't have that form of hideous guilt. My children will never get brought into the mafia or join the military or become a cop or an attorney. I didn't generate slaves on purpose, Because by the time I was 17, I kept looking at two statistics: population J curve and the number of people that were starving to death. And I said, I'm not going to do this world to anyone else. Now, I'm a spiritual person, but not a religious one. And I do understand that we are all immortal souls. And I know for a fact that consciousness comes from another dimension and it goes back into other dimensions when it leaves molecular form. The solidity of our molecular forms itself is somewhat of an illusion if you study subatomic physics, if you want to be bothered to take the time to understand what this whole thing is. So you're not creating a new consciousness when you give birth or sire a child. You're generating a molecular soul cage for an entity that's just fine somewhere else and doesn't need molecules to exist at all. Believe me, I know for a fact. I grew up at a national security agency attached military intelligence base, and the extent to which the United States military itself has studied things like what I'm talking about is truly phenomenal. And most of what I get about mysticism and spirituality comes straight from MI. They know a lot about this that they're not telling people. Now, what has changed in half a century? The population has doubled, but the number of people starving to death has remained the same. And one of the most shameful aspects of human existence, as far as I'm concerned, is that in half a century or more, we can't figure out how to feed babies. Excuse me. Duh. Now, I spoke to Oxfam and UNICEF and the Pacific Rim of the United Nations delegation around 2006, 2007, because at that time I still was this big optimist and I still had a lot of hope and I was still trying to start something called the Planet Peace Project. I'm like John Voight. Now, I don't believe in peace. As long as there are men, there will always be war. That's what John Voight told me several years ago. I argued with him then. I don't argue with him now. But what these people, all of them from the United Nations to UNICEF to Oxfam and all these other organizations said was, Nancy, if Planet Peace Project can help depoliticize hunger, we've got the food. Oh, really? Because I thought that this, anti-hunger effort was going to have to be this whole part of the Planet Peace Project. I thought we're going to have so much money and be so well funded that we get a whole bunch of food and a whole bunch of trucks, a lot of volunteers or paid people, and we're going to have to deliver food to all these people who are starving to death if we don't, right? And they said, no, you don't. If you want to help make peace between warring tribes, I call it the tribes that would remain at war, if no one helps them stop, within countries, often dictators take over and use hunger as genocide to kill their own population, the ones who are against the dictatorship. But often countries that are at war with one another across national boundaries will use famine as a weapon and starve their enemies to death. What kind of species does that to babies? Who on God's green earth would want to have any more? Get yourself sterilized. Have some moral dignity for a change. I think coronavirus may just be nature's correction device, one of many, including global warming, climate change, all these disasters that have gotten so much worse while we screw with the environment, If you don't know what a HARP is, find out, because all of my life, the United States military and other militaries have been messing with the ionosphere. Oh, we're heating up the atmosphere. We're heating up the ionosphere just to figure out if we can, and what will that do? Excuse me. What it did was exacerbate global warming, which was, yes, in part caused by methane from cows and other cattle that we use to slaughter heartlessly, animals that we imprison and torture until we kill them. Um, and all of these automobiles, these mobility pods that really we don't need to the extent that we're using them. There's something called public transportation that works just fine for countries that use a lot of it. We have so many flaws, and we are committing so many massive indignities upon this world so continuously for so long that sometimes I just wonder if the planet itself isn't. Some human traffickers assaulted me several years ago and broke my face, and now I have a crushed sinus, so I leak cerebrospinal fluid out of my face when I cry or get cold. Or anyway, planet peace may never be all that peaceful, and we may not have the ability to make peace between warring tribes so that people stop using hunger to kill each other. But planet peace is, at least I hope, going to be a voice in the silence. And as Malala Yousafzai said, when the whole world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful. At least planet peace can give us a voice. So think of this: Gaia, the consciousness of the planet, is angry at its useless, worthless little species that it thinks it's so smart and calls itself the most evolved form of life on this world when it is not. We have opposable thumbs. Elephants, rhinoceroses, dolphins, porpoises, all these animals, and cows, yeah, cattle, pigs, yeah. These animals, biologists believe, may actually have a greater level of intelligence. Bear with me. Because they have significantly larger brains. And apparently, the size of the brain in the mammal is relative to the intelligence of the mammal. You say, but why don't they have culture? Why don't they build buildings and bridges and have art? Because they don't have opposable thumbs. This is what gets us in trouble. These things right here, where we can grasp and create, have tools and weapons, that's what causes us to be the species that can destroy the world. Think of an orange tree. Have you ever seen one that's well fertilized and well watered and in its prime and has borne a lot of fruit? A single orange tree might bear several hundred oranges. And unless they've been genetically engineered, those oranges might have, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seeds per unit. So let's say an orange tree has 200 oranges per season, and those have 10 seeds each. Well, if 2,000 seeds take root around the orange tree when the oranges fall and the oranges get to go to ground, the original tree will die. And so some have this idea that perhaps the overabundance of, the prolific overpopulation production of life that is so evident in so many species of both plants and animals, fungi as well. Um, Maybe nature's insurance policy, its guarantee that it gets to continue, and there is absolutely no way that even nature itself, according to its conscious or unconscious principles by which it survives and thrives, would want every gamete, every potential form of life to exist. Now, think of human semen. Men produce millions of sperm in their lifetimes, millions upon millions. And there's utterly and absolutely no way that there are enough M-class planets in the galaxy to house all the children that men could produce if every gamete they produce took root and became a human being. So it's illogical. In fact, it is nothing short of ridiculous and stupid for all of us to be going around willy-nilly paying no attention whatsoever to nature's inherent principles of limits being, there being natural limits in a particularly limited space. And there is no reason for us just to pretend we didn't notice that although it took thousands of years to get to 4 billion, it took us only half a century or so to get to 8 billion. Duh! Get yourselves sterilized. Now you're killing the world. When I was growing up, it was like humanity was destroying so much rainforest and so many other habitats that we were killing off approximately one species a day. So 300 or more species of life weren't getting a chance to be alive because humans are too stupid to let them be. I just read recently that it may be up to about 12 a day. This one ridiculously lower form of life called man is killing off maybe as many as 12 other species of life every day. Let's get Elon Musk and NASA to send us all to Mars. Let's repopulate a dead planet before we kill this one off entirely. You think? Think of Immanuel Kant, great uh, French philosopher who wrote hundreds of thousands of words, brilliant, beautiful, eloquent words in his lifetime. He himself said that he could distill the single most important thing he ever had. Listen to me. This person who spent his entire life trying to figure things out, things like philosophy, things like ethics, things like what we're doing here and why we're here, what we're supposed to be doing while we're here. He said that the single most important thing he had to say to humanity with all of his thinking and all of his writing could be distilled into a single sentence, and he called it the categorical imperative, or the Maxim imperative, meaning the most salient or important maxim or rule. And although it's beautiful in German, I can't repeat that right now. He said it translates to behave in such a way that if everyone on earth followed your example, it would be a beautiful world. Behave in such a way so that if everyone followed your example, it would be a beautiful world. Who does that, really? I've tried. The categorical imperative is one of the main reasons I didn't breed in captivity. And when I made that decision at the age of 17 back in the 1970s, I didn't really know much about mafia recruitment. I didn't really know how rampant the militaries of the world are basically slave ships that imprison people's souls and their dignity and their choices and their morality. There were so many things I didn't even know about how horrifying so many aspects of human culture and societies are. When I decided I wasn't going to do this world to anybody else and I wasn't going to do anybody else to this world. So think on these things, my friend. Stop being such a critter. Stop living your lives for sensation, your next fix, your next sensational, you know, your next sex act, your next drunk, your next drug addict fix, your next, video game fix, whatever you're using to numb yourself down and dumb yourself down. Stop it. Grow up and show up with some actual moral integrity, some dignity, some intelligence for a change, and stop breeding in captivity. Because COVID may be a correctional device that nature kind of sort of produced to make this a better world. What's it going to do next? Bye now. More later. Do I gotta tell you everything?